years of high-profile summits and ambitious announcements, there are increasing concerns over whether the grouping has translated rhetoric into meaningful strategic outcomes. Even the expected Quad summit in India remains uncertain, fueling questions over the seriousness of the long-term American commitment. Supporters of the group argue that the Quad has strengthened maritime coordination, strategic signaling, and regional deterrence against China. Many flagship initiatives involving infrastructure, health, security, emerging technologies, economic cooperation have failed to produce transformative outcomes. And most important of all, the big wants to cut a deal with Xi Jinping, and that's the biggest worry. So on one hand you have Quad and America trying to treat India like a frontline state, but on the other hand, Americans have a hidden agenda, and that is to have a good, nice deal with China. And on this issue, let me straight away go to Professor Swaran Singh from JNU. Sir, what is the future of Quad, keeping in mind the temperamental foreign policy of Donald Trump?
There is no doubt the fact that Quad summit hasn't happened since September of 2024, that was the last time. It does raise certain curiosity as to what is happening to Quad, especially so because it was on a hyperactive mode 4 years before that. So from 2021 to 2024, we saw 6 summit meetings, 8 foreign ministers meetings. Before that, we also saw in his first term, President Trump taking enormous interest in turning Quad into an anti-China platform, making the Pacific Command into Indo-Pacific Command. So that hyper-action, I think, is also something that makes Quad look like virtually on the margins. But if there are internal disjunctions, if some members have changing priorities, this is normal of almost all organizations. All platforms go through that exercise. India's core principle of non-alignment has moved to multi-alignment, for example. So things do change, definitely at the kind of level of strategic signaling to China and Russia. That is not happening in Quad anymore. But I think there are other areas, for example, Malabar naval exercises, which brings 4 navies together. Or Indo-Pacific, maritime domain awareness initiative is there. They have initiatives in critical technologies, in rare earths, etc. So Quad is not completely dysfunctional in that sense. Foreign ministers are meeting. The next meeting is due in Delhi next week. They have had 3 meetings since the second term of President Trump began. So I would say that definitely Quad has transformed into a relatively low-profile kind of a grouping now, where it is functioning, and India accordingly will kind of put that much of investment and attention.
But doesn't it also, sir, erode the trust, because there is also a feeling within the establishment that Americans can drop any arrangement like a hot potato if their core interests are served. If you recall, I'm forgetting the name of the gentleman, they said they're not going to make the same mistake they made with China when it comes to India's development. And we share a boundary with China, a contested boundary with China, and that's really, it's a big problem for us, because China doesn't want to resolve it in India's sense of time. They will take their own sweet time. And then if tomorrow Trump cuts a deal with Beijing, then it left us high and dry with our own neighbor.
I think I am more than confident the fact that Trump looks at China as a systemic challenger. There is near impossibility of the G2 kind of cutting the deal and just 2 nations beginning to kind of work together in organizing.
Then what's your assessment of this meeting, sir? Then what is the of this meeting?
This meeting is clearly showcasing tactical kind of stabilization of relationship into competitive coexistence. It's not trying to reform or transform their relationship. Both have their enormous domestic limitations, political turmoils on both sides. Trump has largely economic issues at home. She has political issues at home. So that relevance of India is not disappearing, except that given the fact that there have been Ukraine war, war in Gaza, war in Iran, has clearly distracted the American administration and leadership. Trump particularly is unique in many ways. He's a guy who believes in deal making, talking to national leaders directly beyond going through protocols and institutions. In fact, he listed recently 65 international institutions and platforms where he wants to withdraw from and leave those. And in that sense, it's an unusual situation. And that has not just impacted Quad, but impacted a whole lot of other platforms where President Trump, NATO would be a great example. I mean, the backbone of American global leadership is again in a disarray, and European nations are looking for solutions by themselves. So Quad is facing exactly same as several other institutions are facing, which is a little disregard from President Trump individually, not institutions of United States. I don't believe the power elite of United States doesn't have faith in Quad. But right now it seems Quad is not being very hyperactive at the level of summit meetings, which was happening in 2024. And therefore, India is accordingly engaging with Quad as much as possible in terms of mechanisms that are still functioning and has a lot of other opportunities.
Are you
So
saying?
BRICS
Are you
has
saying?
expanded in the same
Are you saying that it's in some sort of an hibernation to be retrieved when required?
hibernation perhaps would be slightly stronger term. As I'm saying, if you kind of omit summit meetings, rest of Quad is still functioning, except that it was very kind of heavy on the top because they were meeting so frequently. And United States during first term of President Trump was really projecting Quad as anti-China platform. And you would remember Mike Pompeo's speeches of who was saying, I make difference between the political party that is ruling in China, Chinese people, and he would address
I'll
Chinese
quote your
people.
article.
And therefore India was...
I'll quote your article, the quiet quad from strategic signaling to an embedded minilateralism or a silent drift. Silent drift? Silent drift?
Potentially it could go silent, except that right now we see there is a fair amount of cooperation and bonhomie between Australia, Japan and India. And in that sense, these three have continued to work together. And right now on 24th and 25th of this month, we will see all foreign ministers meeting in New Delhi. And I think that could give a little momentum perhaps because the earlier two meetings happened in Washington, D.C. And in that sense, in that capital of the world, in that sense, these issues were not getting as much highlighted as perhaps in New Delhi they will be. So yes, there is a relative marginalization, if you want to call it, in terms of high politics because summits are not taking place. But summits are only one part of Quad, and they have over time also institutionalized it, and some of other mechanisms are still in operation. And we don't know what happens in Beijing, whether that will make President Trump rethink and plan a visit for New Delhi.
Okay, thank you, sir. I've really run short of time, but I would say that from your own article, I think it's looked like a silent drift. So this is all I had on Point tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you and good night.
First Battle of Panipat, 1914. Madhubani, carbon dioxide, Tropic of Cancer, Kyoto Protocol.
Which city is the textile and diamond capital of India?
Surat,
Help me prep for my UPSC exam requisites.
Snow Leopard, Inertia,